right, everyone. I have two very special guests today. I'm so excited. I have been looking forward to this interview for a while now. I was going to say a long time, but I jumped on this interview and I was like, oh, I got to get scheduled right away. And then I started carrying around the Sacred Web Tarot guidebook and deck with me kind of like everywhere I went for the past month. So needless to say, really excited for this conversation. And the co-creators of this deck and guidebook are Jannie Brown and James Brown. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So Jannie, do you want to go first?
Sure. I'm happy to do that. So my name's Jannie Bui Brown, and I am the mother of James Brown. And I was a former English teacher, and then wound up staying at home and raising our three kids. But I'm sort of a lifelong learner and just very curious. And I started to explore the tarot about 30 years ago, and then really fell in love with yoga. And at the time, like, I had to drive 45 minutes to find a yoga class where we were living in Southwest Ohio. And but I became certified and I taught for many years. And I'm also an artist, and I make jewelry, and I have been very fortunate enough to sell my jewelry and be able to donate all the profits to beautiful work being done in the world.
I love that. Thank you, Jannie. And your son, James. James, how are you today? Welcome
Hi.
to the show.
Yeah, no, I'm doing very well. It's always fun to say, hi, my name is James Brown. It really never gets old for me. And yeah, I went to college, got out, and started a film company that I moved to Denver to try and find some different kind of work. I cracked my skull in 2017, and I lost my memory till early 2020. And so over that time, the person I'd always talk to about every story or problem in my life, my mother, Jannie Brown, she and I just started talking about random different philosophies and ideas, and we ended up on tarot. I started drawing as many animals as I could think of, and I'm a little traumatized by webs and feathers, but overall it was a fantastic experience, and here I am today, somehow still kicking.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad to hear that you are here. And have you regained all of your memory?
It's kind of like for every day, that you have full of memories, imagine that cut by, I don't know, like a 16th. So it's like a little flash here and there. The way I like to describe it in hindsight is like constantly waking up in different places, not knowing how you got there, why you're there, who you're with. And so that leads to a lot of anxiety and terror or anger. And then you forget that part and it goes on. And a lot of rehab, both physical and mental. We actually had a guest a few weeks ago talk about their experience with the TBI. And it is wildly unique. We don't understand the brain very well. And so it is so individualistic and difficult for a lot of people involved. So anybody out there who has, forgotten how to read, write, see straight, you're not alone, and it can get better. I really hope it is for most of you guys out there, because it is a scary experience.
Yeah, you're definitely right. You're not alone. I actually just had the good fortune to interview a woman whose name is Abby Morgan. And I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she's a playwright, a screenwriter. And she just published a memoir called This Is Not a Pity Memoir. And it's about her experience with her husband, who was, he wasn't induced into a coma, but he went into a coma as a result of a drug he was taking, lost his memory, woke up, started to go through the rehab process after 6 months of being in a coma. And he started to remember his family, but he didn't remember his wife, Abby. He thought she was an imposter. So fast forward to my conversation with her yesterday. it sounds like he's regained almost all of his memory, starts to recognize her for who she is. And you're right, it's possible. And you're right, you're not alone. And so, yeah, for sure. I'm so glad you're with us. I'm so glad you're healthy. I'm so glad you're here. And thank you so much for creating this beautiful work I showed it once before, the Sacred Web Tarot. And I want to show the box because it has some beautiful color on it. But I am just in love, like I said, with this deck. I've been carrying it around with me. The last time I went out with my mom to have wine, I brought my tarot deck and we pulled some cards, and it was just so fun. And I pulled a card today, kind of like I've been doing every day, but I was thinking it'd be kind of cool to pull a card today in honor of our conversation. And I pulled, it looks like an elephant, and it's the number 9, right? Mm-hmm. So I guess my question is, because I'm not as well versed in tarot, I'm sure, as you two are, and many even of my listeners. So bear with me, listeners, as I learn more about tarot. I know there's the major arcana, minor arcana, and then it seems like there's supporting cards in terms of the way that it's designed in this book. It are elements of earth, air, water, fire, and then is there like ether or beyond air?
Yeah, ether. So we do have like the traditional elements for the suits, for sure. One of the things that I did, and as I was working with all these incredible images that James was drawing, started to see this deep connection between the chakras and of earth and water and fire and air, which are, the first 4 chakras. And within that, our suits are traditional in that they do follow those elements. We have our court cards are just renamed, just to keep it non-binary, gender neutral. And then we do have an extra card, but in general, it's the 0 through 22 in the majors, and what you pulled is the 9 in the majors.
How do I know that? By looking at, how do I know that I have a major arcana by looking at this?
Good question.
So it does not have one of the sigils or symbols to represent the 4 elements. So, for example, James, you want to talk about, the earth sigil is just so freaking cool.
On the inside of the box are the 4 sigils, and it's sort of like a hey, this is what's coming. And the reason that actually those are not numbered, are not named, the major arcana, is I think both some experimentation and good fortune with experiences when reading. The titles in particular traditionally throw off the person's intentionality. So I normally, and I believe with my mom, we sort of go through what they're thinking, what they're looking at, what they're feeling, and then we can reveal the names. And normally that creates another layer of insight. So that's, I think, the primary reason why I pushed for that design. And in terms of the structure and the way that this whole thing was produced, there are the major arcana, which the first card we drew is traditionally named the death card. And I had just sort of done that. And it felt like a weird challenge. It was right after Christmas, and I was like, you know what? Let's see what happens if I take it. And as my mom has right now, I don't know if everyone can see it at home. I can describe it real quick. It is a flower with a seed stretching down the stem. The flower is wilting at the top, but the stem leads to this purple seed in a bright white light with an infinity sign scratched underneath it. And the idea to me was, I left, but I came back and I'm different and I can grow again. And so this idea of rebirth, the cyclical nature, really pushed a lot of fun conversations. And so we worked on the major arcana together, the universe, all these different titles. And I read up on some of them. And then the rest of it, the minor arcana, the things with sigils in it or the body parts, those were like a Rorschach test. So each one of those cards hold a really unique story to me that is then interpreted into the tradition of tarot. And it's just so wonderful to hear the stories that I see be translated into such beautiful poetry for others to adapt as their own. You know, I feel literally no ownership over it because it gets to mean whatever you see, whatever you feel about it is right. You're right. I promise, you know, that's how this deck was supposed to work. And I believe the writing creates so much empowerment. It's, if when you read the book, you can imagine how fortunate I am to have someone like that during the struggles of rehabilitation. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Jannie, if you speak and hold up the card, your screen will come into play. For those watching on YouTube, for those
got it.
listening,
Okay.
maybe not.
Got it. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, if you want to say something and just hold up the card that James was just describing.
Yeah. So this, when I saw this card, I just was like, oh my God, I think we're going to make a tarot deck, because to me, the death card, which is traditionally so scary for many people, the people that I've worked with, the cards. And to me, it is one of the richest, most powerful cards that you can pull, because what it's really saying is it's an invitation to let go of what's no longer serving. Let that thing die, right? It's not a physical death. It's not a death of a person. It's I mean, a thought pattern or a behavior that's not working, and potentially a relationship that needs to, you know, be put aside for a while. And so I find that this is like the most liberating card. And one of the reasons we changed the name from death to release was to remove any fear. And one of our, I mean, James and I were really aligned around trying to make a deck that has no scary cards, because each card is truly an opportunity for self-reflection and transformation. And we acknowledge, I mean, just from the origin of this, that the challenges and the struggles that you go through, that we all go through, are the great teachers. So we really wanted to kind of celebrate the shadow as, you know, befriend it and thank it for what it's taught you.
Yeah.
So
I think that's so important, to be able to explore the shadow and to look at it and not just keep pushing. For me, it feels like I just kind of push it into unconscious, and then shadow always comes up to the surface anyways, even if I ignore it. Usually in adverse ways that I didn't intend for. So I'm curious, I think I read this in the guidebook. Is it true that, because I believe in traditional tarot, you can pull a card and it has a face up and it has a reverse? And maybe this is what you're speaking to, but I don't believe that your tarot deck is intended for that reverse angle. Rather, it's like, well, you could look at it in a positive light, or you could look at it in this kind of, I guess, shadow light to continue with that thread.
Yeah, I like that idea. I think our intention, I mean, we sort of joked about it, but we're like, life is just kind of hard enough as it is. I don't need reversals, you know, and James and I don't really, in our practice currently, I mean, in the past I have read with reversals, but you know, gosh, since the head injury and me really coming back to tarot and studying it again pretty intensely over the last 5 years, I just kind of stopped doing reversals. But I will say that when a reversal comes up, a really easy way to approach that card is just to think of the energy of that card as being waiting to be actualized or accessed. And actually, I'm going to hold up a card again, because this is kind of amazing. Oh, I don't know if you'll be able to see. So on the back of our card is this web. And there's an opening that's on the eastern side of the card, if you will. So the right side of the card. And if you keep your cards with the opening on the eastern side, which the east is new beginnings, joy, possibility, hope, sort of the gift of the leap card, then you will never pull a reversed card. So the design of the back of the card facilitates upright readings.
Oh, that's cool. I like that.
I think on just the artistic personal side, I guess, of working with this and reading, I looked at the idea of inversion or reversal, whatever you'd like to call it, as binary, just like the traditional hierarchy of knight, king, queen. And it doesn't make sense as much anymore as it used to. It doesn't work like that. If the way I hit my head, I'll just fill this in. I tripped on stairs. That's it. Something so simple, something you do every day, and to try and dictate the fact that these two ideas of light, shadow, dark are separate, it doesn't feel as honest as saying they are equal. They're the yin and the yang. They feed off of each other. To try and divide it is the same thing as trying to divide people. It just doesn't make sense. The spectrum between feels so gradient, so to me, that was a really big influence, which is also why I think the art reflects this black and white with color, this mixture, this inability to point to whether it's got a good intention or a bad intention. It's your intention. And so that I would sort of just add on, in a non technical sense. It's just sort of the overall approach of my philosophy behind it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that. Thank you. I think it's really helpful because, at least for me, when I will do a spread or a reading for myself, trying to interpret it is usually challenging enough. And that says something about me in terms of my ability to trust intuition and listen to intuition. But yeah, without having to be like, now wait, which way is right side up? What does that mean? So I appreciate that. I appreciate that. So I'm curious, do you both do readings for others?
Yeah, I've been doing readings, and the reason I'm going first is because I've been doing them much less long, and I use no real sort of structure. I give the deck of cards, whatever I was using at the time, which is normally an old, very dirty version of our larger proto decks. And all I ask for is to shuffle and cut the deck once. And that's the only kind of instruction I feel comfortable giving. Mm-hmm. I suggest 4 cards, and maybe we can pull a helper in, whatever you feel like. And then what unfolds is incredible. How you shuffle, how you cut the deck. Do you leave the deck separate? Do you pull from both sides? If you do you pull from the bottom? Do you spread out? Do you pull the cards, keep them face down? Do you pull them face up? That entire experience, I think, allows me to, as the reader, to just experience the person a little bit. And then we go through each card. I ask what they see, if they feel anything. And then by the end of it, I sort of rearrange it into a map in my head and really just repeat what they have already known or said about themselves. I like to think of it as aggregate story retelling, basically taking all that information and delineating it into a story that you really have been telling yourself already.
Yeah. Why 4 cards? Is there any particular reason behind that?
So weirdly enough, I actually normally end up with people doing 3. I say 3 to 4. I think 3 is a really good prime number. 4 is interesting for me when I try and map things out, because I end up normally with like a northwest, east, south, or a different kind of bridge. Yeah, I mean, as someone who does the art and is an art person and sees everything like that, sometimes I have to rearrange the cards after I've spoken with someone and then try and explain the map and the system that I just put together as the backbone of the narrative. I really try not to do divination. I don't feel comfortable saying this will or won't happen. And I really don't feel comfortable giving advice, which is why I do my best just to listen and understand, empathize, and relate at the end of it all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I love the number 4 too, because it is, if you think about its connection to, in astrology, to the 4th house or to the 4 legs of a chair, It is very foundational. It's a really cool thing to build upon, because it's very stable, and also, again, I have a directions practice that I do in meditation, and I love that with the 4. And then potentially, if you wanted to pull some extra ones for a reading like that, you could have the above energy, the below energy, and the energy that centers you in your heart. So then you'd have a really cool 7-card spread.
Oh yeah. Hey, that
which is not in the guidebook, which would have been really cool.
Well, you just said something that I always look at it when I open my box as above, so below, which always makes me think of balance, I think, and also the necessity of light and shadow, and the necessity of the idea of the earthly realm and the spiritual realm. I'm curious if there was any intention behind those words being there. I imagine there is, but what is your intention, if so?
Well, I think you said it right there. One, I think this gets to the idea of, we are spiritual beings, but we live in a body, we're in a material world. And to me, acknowledging that those two things exist simultaneously, right? Our spiritual selves, our material selves. So below, I think of as what I put my feet on, and the gift of being able to walk the earth. And above would be that sort of sense of spaciousness around the heart. And so the home of your soul and your soul's energy. So that's kind of the idea, is let's within this conversation that these cards can have with us individually, when we work with them, is this joining together of what maybe felt separate, but can never be separate, because the soul is whole. It's perfect, just as it is. And which is, the soul is not binary, right? It's whole. Hence, really going with the non-gendered, non-binary approach made a lot of sense on a spiritual level for me. And then James, you can,
Yeah. So piggybacking off of that, which leads into the most amazing, simple discussion I've had with my mother about something kind of serious. She and I are on the phone, and she's asking about the Queen of Cups, the Queen of Water. And, without really skipping a beat, I just go, wait. Liv has been my sibling and identified as my sibling rather than my sister for about 5 years then. And they've been your daughter. Like, why would we do that? And there was just a beat of silence. And I was like, oh, why would we? Why should we? Like, is there a better way to explore this, this idea of as above, so below? Let us meet in the sacred center. And that, to me, is the sort of linchpin of all of this. Is you can relate high and low to all of your mythologies, all of your emotional distresses, but meeting in the sacred center, it's really hard to misread that one. It's so honest and true, and it just it asks you to love yourself, to be the center of yourself. It asks you to be centered with others. It asks you to imagine what that idea even is, while acknowledging it's not possible to completely exist in one space for forever. So putting that together on the box was really, really, really powerful for me. As a design point, that really, and maybe it was like one of the last things we did, but that's what convinced me this deck might work, is that right there was such an honest, open invitation. You don't have to open the book. You don't have to look at a card. The box is already saying, hey, let's take a minute.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. There's a couple different directions I want to go. I think I'm going to start with, I want to touch on the history of tarot, because I recently started to read. I'm curious if either of you have heard of the work by, I believe it's Karen Vogel, who wrote Mother Peace.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was my first deck, was the Mother Peace. Yes.
Oh,
and
was it circular?
Yes. It blew me away. looking at our book right now. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. I haven't read it in a long time. I mean, I got that in, gosh, I think 20 years ago, 25 years ago.
Okay.
No more, because that was my first deck. So
yeah. Oh, that's so cool. I love that. Well, so here's what my question is around that topic is the history of tarot. And my understanding behind that deck in particular is the goddess archetype, and how at the time that tarot came about, the goddess, the feminine, the witchy, the mystical, the magical really had to go underground, and all of that medicine and that healing had to go underground because the rise of the religious was making it very dangerous for people to be outwardly healers, magical, using methods like this to heal other people. So it's my understanding that the tarot was created as a game to hide these ancient practices of healing and divination and intuition, and making it accessible, because books were being burnt, and people were being burnt at the stake and massacred. So this wisdom and magic is hidden in the deck of a game, right? So, which is so fascinating to me. And I'm wondering, like, okay, well, what else are we missing here? Because there's so much, I'm sure, that is hidden in this deck that I'm not even seeing, that I'm just barely scratching the surface of. What do you think it is that's hidden in there?
That's a great question. I'm still like going through the history of tarot, because there are two different thoughts around that. Some is that it was just a game, but that later in like the late 19th century and early 20th century, it became associated with forms of spiritual practices, and that's where you get the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, and then the Thoth deck that Aleister Crowley, so Pamela Coleman Smith was the artist for the Rider-Waite-Smith, and we said we'd get the artist name for the Thoth because it was also a woman, which is kind of wild, because the decks were these decks were written by men but illustrated by women, and we love the fact that we've kind of flipped that the artist is, there you go.
Yeah.
My deck is too beat up to read the name, so I'll have to Google that. But
is
this
that
is
duct tape.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this
Classic.
is my first deck. Crowley is an interesting figure, to say the least. This deck is wildly inspiring. It is insanely subconscious, and I think it has some of the evolution of what's hidden in these ideas. I think the artist and the writer take this story tradition that may or may not have developed as a game, and what traditions really don't start as a game. And so from the Wave Rider to Crowley, you have such an exploration of identity in Crowley and sexuality compared to the Rider-Smith, which is so classical in every sense of the word. And so when it comes to us, there's a million hidden things in each card. Trying to think about the history of tarot and what may or may not be additive out there. I'm sure we'll discover more and learn more about the past, or at least I hope. But I can promise that every deck, every creator builds their own universe that surrounds this piece that contains, it's a self-sustaining narrative. It exists outside of the artist, outside of the writer, outside of the audience. It just is. And whatever you see that as, I think, is where the real true magic is hidden. It's in between the lines. It's in between the cards. It's this feeling that I think that really, really is the sort of key, the core secret, the thing that makes people start off by saying, "Oh, I've never done this before," and ends with, "Oh my gosh, are you a wizard? This was incredible. I hope to do it again sometime." So that, to me, I think, is the lineage and the evolution from my very young perspective on it and unstudied and not academic. Anyways, that is my layman approach to this.
Yeah, thank you.
I like that.
Yeah, I do too. Well, and I mean, we all have a different experience with it and approach to it, and then our evolutionary process is so ever evolving. So I love that. I'm thinking back to my first experience with what I consider, and I'm curious what you all think of this, a parallel tradition of reading runes, which are like those little they're like little pieces of stone with I'm blanking on is it Viking symbols?
Yes.
Traditional, it dates back to Celtic and Nordic. I think Nordic went first though. And oh my goodness, do I love sigils or runes. I call them sigils.
Okay.
And is there a question? I'm so sorry. I got way too excited.
It is exciting. Well, I think my question is, okay, so I remember my first experience with this. My parents had the runes, and I was home from college, and they had their friends over, and they were pulling runes, and they were like, "Hey, Tessa, do you want to have a rune reading?" And I was like, "Okay." And I think I asked something like, I also want to ask a follow-up question about how to ask questions, because I think I asked something like, something to do with careers, trying to make a decision about what to study. Should I change my major, and what should I do with my life? Basically, in essence, tell me how to live my life. Always seeking the external for answers about how to live my life. And I don't remember what the reading said, but I do remember this chilling feeling that came over me that was very much embodied in this sense of like, oh shit, yeah, that's right. And it was almost like, it's hard to articulate, right? Because those feelings, I feel like when we try to explain it to other people, in particular people who haven't experienced things like tarot or runes, it sounds a little bit out there. Like what? I don't know. That sounds crazy. I don't think it's crazy, but I think trying to explain it to someone who hasn't experienced it is challenging, is all I'm saying. But I do remember feeling like, whoa, this is a door I just opened that I love and I want more of. And so my parents actually gifted me that rune set, and I have it to this day, and I frequently return to it. Okay, so where was I going with that? I think I want to know, so I do want to put a pin in the subject of how to ask questions of tarot, but I'd like to know from each of you what your first experience with tarot was, and what that was like.
Well, mine was with the Mother Peace deck that a friend of, that one of my dear friends had, and then I went and got for myself. And just what you're saying, which is so interesting, when I first turned the cards over, just the leg chills. And when I get the leg chills, that is to me like there's a truth that I'm experiencing. The body doesn't lie, the brain can, it spends its time trying to keep us safe, but is not always the most reliable narrator. And I think, especially like when you're working on developing your intuition, like listening to where you feel that yes, or that energy in your body that's saying connecting you to that moment in such a visceral way. So that's mine was kind of identical to exactly what you're saying. And I also just remember with the Mother Piece, just seeing all these different shaped women in different sizes, all beautiful. And, that to me was just such a gift at that time, having struggled with mental health and eating issues for decades back then. So it was a doorway. I love that. And I think of each card as a doorway into a deeper connection to your own self.
Thank you.
So I don't know if there's like a single, I'll just tell a story as it were.
Please.
I grew up with my mom, teaching me yoga and all these other great tools that really helped her life. I was a teen And then so rebellious. And then by the time I got to college, I had some pretty serious undiagnosed bipolarism, and it led to a pretty bad depression with some pretty extreme thoughts and actions, to say the least. Actually, just for the audience out there, yeah, I was suicidal at one point, and I'm not anymore. And I didn't think I could get happy. I didn't think I could ever like myself. I didn't think I could like anything at all, period. So no matter how many times my mom would try and include me in a tarot reading, I rejected it. I didn't believe in anything because I didn't have anything I wanted to believe in. So of course, hitting your head and shaking your entire brain up, it's going to change a few things. So I started just talking with my mom, and I guess that would be probably my first independent experience of trying to take it on. But I, for the first 2.5, 3 years, never really thought of this as tarot. To me, this has always been based off of image therapy and empathy and listening. So I never ever I always gave a disclaimer, and I still do if someone's a little skeptical, that I don't treat this like I know your soul. I don't treat this like I see all. I don't treat this like the cards see all. I treat this as a way to have a different kind of conversation, as a way to relate to something we all experience: nature, space, animals. I'm looking at the buffalo right now, and it's so scary to me right now, but tomorrow I guarantee he's going to look like, Chipper or something. And so over time, I have definitely come to accept a lot of the bone chilling kind of self-awareness that these cards can bring. I just really struggle with putting it as anything else. That feeling you're describing is self-recognition, self-awareness. It's that story that I tell you at the end that you already know. That's what I love about questions. I asked, and is this okay to lead into?
Yeah, please go pick it up. Let's talk
Awesome.
about questions.
So questions. We all got them.
Yes.
Lots of them.
Yes.
And so I normally, like I was saying, I give someone the deck. I ask to shuffle, to cut it, and to meditate on a question, something that's been eating in the back of your brain. I call it an emotional writer's block sometimes. Just that thing that's, you're stuck and you don't know why. So just meditate on that feeling. I don't even need a question. And 9 times out of 10, they don't tell me the question. I don't ask for it. It's not up to me. It's up to them. So normally by the time we finish, they ask the question to me. They say, wow, do you want to know what I was thinking about? And I'm like, sure. And they say, I was thinking about my struggle with being here working at this place I don't feel is giving back to me. I am trying to explore my own life after living with a very conservative family, and I don't know how to have an intimate relationship in this society. I've heard so many different things. One time at the end, someone just was like, I was asking if I should get divorced, So everyone approaches this with the question, and that frame of mind can feel so intimidating. That's why I fall back on image therapy. So that way the question can be answered with a little bit of pretext, I guess, to set up that frame of thought, just that idea. And, weirdly enough, it's all so different per person you do a reading with, because, my mom has a different energy than me. And so that creates a totally different question. Even if it's worded the same, the intention's different. So to me, that idea of asking the cards, asking the universe, asking yourself, it just comes down to trying to listen to that gut feeling. And I hope the cards just reinforce that gut feeling 9 times out of 10. Or, sometimes we get a little disillusioned, and maybe that's the other backup that it does, is sort of like, hey, is that really what you're feeling? So yeah, that's the question. It's infinite. It has infinite answers, but you know it. You do.
That's beautiful. I love that, James.
Yeah,
it's always such a challenge for me because I want, like, let's say, for example, I was like, okay, should I get a divorce? I want a clear yes or no. And I never get that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, no. And that's the curse of humanity, of being human, of wanting that control. And I'm anxious around stairs. Like, control, this idea of safety and security around control and yes or no. The woman I was working with, at the end of it, when she explained everything, she's like, I already knew what I was going to do. And I was like, yeah, you did. So wanting the yes and no, you got to listen to yourself, Tess. Like, the yes, the no. It's just really hard to open yourself up to yourself sometimes.
Yeah. You could say that again in a microphone,
Sure.
in a megaphone. Play it. I mean, you are speaking into a microphone, but I mean, the amplification of it.
Yeah.
Jannie, did you want to answer that question?
I think, James, I really liked what you had to say there. That really resonates. I do feel like the questions it's less about a question than about taking that time to just be present. Right. And just sitting and kind of letting the noise quiet down a little bit so that you can hear that inner voice, what needs to be asked. And that's part of the practice, I think, of sitting down and pulling a card. And I mean, there's, as James said, the questions are infinite, but I do think personally for me, like just right now, like when I'm pulling a card, I'm just like, what is the energy I need right now? So it's more about energy than asking a question. So what energy do I need to center myself today? And this is what I've been doing for like the last, I can't find my older journals, but at least 2 years. And every day I pull, what energy do I need to center myself? What will support that? So what energy will support that centering? And then I've been pulling from the top of my deck. I shuffle and everything, and I'll pull from the top because I ask, and that's sort of what the deck is still saying. Yes, you don't have to fan. I used to fan, and so I'll turn the whole thing over and see what card is underneath it all. And I call that the source card. So I have those 3 cards that then I work with those as journal prompts, and that gets me writing every day, which has been like the gift of this project, besides James coming back to himself through his art and his efforts, is that, I'm a writer, and I was, when I was younger, and a poet, and kind of put all that stuff away. I mean, I wrote for classes when I was teaching, but that it's such a gift to me. And so that's just the way I'm working with it. So I don't really even ask a question. It's just more, I guess it is a question. What energy do I need? But
and that leads into just this amazing experience that my mom and I have started to curate. Is we did it once so far on a Zoom with an audience we couldn't see, and we call it a vibe check. It's what I do with the card. I pull a card and I'm like, what is going on? And you look at the card, you feel the card, and maybe if anybody ever needed it, you reach out to us and we can help you get a vibe check. Just see where you're at,
sure.
And it falls back on that being present. So that's one of the things I really have started to enjoy experimenting with, is this idea of just the moment, that vibe. Where are you? And how can that moment of realization help you figure out the next step?
Yeah, I love that. Can we do a vibe check?
Oh, yes, we can.
Sweet.
All right. It's funny. I do have a few secret traditions that I do when I'm reading that I don't think anybody has ever picked up on. I normally have a pen really close by with pieces of paper, so I can write down some key phrases. I actually always try and light something on fire, like a flame. Nobody's noticed that one yet, and it's very obvious. So, but I'll be in the middle of a coffee shop and just grab a candle from a different table. So I do have a lot of my own spirituality embedded in these processes lately. Because I'm trying to meet people at the sacred center, I suppose, is my easiest answer. So the card that we are working with today, I remember drawing this card. This was quite a day. And I will let Jannie take the first, because I normally need a second to like sit with the card. But Jannie, do you want to run on with this?
Yeah. So this is, you can see our feather sigil. So this is the suit of air, and it's the 5. And if you think about the 5 as being kind of in the middle of the journey, each suit has 1 through 10. And the middle is usually there's a place of struggle or challenge as you're trying to get to that goal or working through a cycle or whatever it is. So, so for this one, the mantra for this is change. And you get to, it's a card that says, whatever is going on with your thoughts, because the suit of air deals with thoughts and how we communicate, and ideas, how we communicate those. You always have the power to change your point of view, to change what thoughts you're putting in your mind. So I feel like this card is really empowering in a moment of struggle. That moose is clearly, cannot see the moon or the light. And yeah.
Go ahead, James.
Yeah. Okay. I could go into what this card originally felt like and is, but when it comes to the vibe check for now, it's an evolution after screaming into nothing. It's a guttural roar to change the very foundations around you. It's the acceptance of your own voice and recognizing its power, the fact that it could destroy the moon itself, that it could eat parts of this. It's hungry and it's ready. It wants to let it roar. That would be my vibe check.
That's cool.
Well, that seems pretty appropriate after yesterday. The opportunity to make our voices heard and the challenges that, accompany those.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Elections.
Right.
So, because this episode will air after election day, I do want to mention that, yes, you're right, Jannie. It is very apparent that our voices need to be heard. And so, yeah, thank you for saying that.
Yeah, to come together in support of each other.
Yeah.
It looks like you've got something really big to say, man. This card's just really talking to me right now. I don't know. It's exciting. I
love that.
I get way too personal on these vibe checks compared to my mom, but I hope it wasn't overreaching.
Oh no, I love the personal, and that's where I think I usually kind of step over the boundary and be like, so tell me what I should do. Do you know, I'm always asking, well, what is my next step and what does that mean? So how do I enact that?
Well, if we had 30 minutes, we could probably come up with a decent game.
We could talk about that card for 30 minutes.
I promise. I promise.
One thing I would say about any of the cards in the suit of air is that when I started to when the chakras and the suit started to talk to each other and the relationship started to become clear to me, I really wanted to associate the root chakra energy with the earth cards and sacral chakra energy with the suit of water, and then solar plexus energy with the suit of fire. And then when we get to air, it's the heart chakra. And all of a sudden, I was like, oh, okay. Just when we think about our thoughts, and that's the suit of air, right? But we align them with the heart, then everything starts to fall into place. And so the suit of air or swords traditionally tends to be the scariest suit, because our thoughts can cut ourselves, cut others. Our words can do the same. And to me, then when we can think of all of those air cards in relationship to our own heart, it just becomes, it's a little easier to navigate some of those challenges.
Yeah, thank you. So I have two more questions. One is for you, James, and one is for you, Jannie. Shoot, I want to make sure I don't forget the one I wanted to ask Jannie. But James, the question I have for you is, you said you remembered when you drew this card and what a day it was and what it meant for you. And aside from the vibe, it seems like there's something more to say about this card in particular.
Oh, so yeah, like I said, each of these cards, and I'm kind of anxious actually to talk about the personal stories behind them because I don't want them to be colored, but I will talk about this one and reflect on that idea later.
Well, you don't have to. I mean, please don't say anything that feels...
I can just talk a little bit about, I guess, the thought process.
Okay.
So this is one of the few cards that's truly symmetrical for the character. I really don't like using symmetry because it felt lazy. I know that's not a good reason at all. It just was where I was at the time. I didn't think anything was going to happen with the deck. I had been in recovery. The anger, the confusion, the frustration, waking up every single day wondering, wait, what? And then trying to figure out what to do during the day. It was maddening. If I wasn't in therapy, physical or otherwise, I was at this coffee shop and I was drawing because I didn't know what else to do. And so this card, I will show it again. To me at the time, I was focused a lot on subconsciously nature conservation. So this was a moose unfairly caught in a trap. That to me was the idea behind it. And then the technical part that that made me realize I'm probably like the right kind of different neurologically is the moon. And I doubt anyone would be able to tell. So go pick up the deck or look on one of our sites maybe. I went in and cut the moon apart piece by piece. So it's all part of the original structure. It's all part of the moon. There's nothing, energy cannot be created or destroyed. So how can you manipulate it? That was the real essence behind the moment where felt like I got my foot caught in a trap and I just needed to try and be heard or change something.
Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
That is so the energy of that card too, of the 5 of feathers or 5 of air, is that feeling of being trapped, within your own thoughts or whatever. And then, but to understand that you have the power to liberate yourself is part of the journey of kind of remembering that you actually have that power, which is also kind of the story of the journey, the archetypal journey in the tarot.
Yeah.
It's also, it's supposed to also say, it's okay to scream. It's okay to yell. You get to be mad sometimes. It's okay.
Yeah.
So sorry, just felt like that was kind of important there.
No, and I think you're right on with that. I mean, I think there's so many things to be concerned about, to be angry about, to be screaming about right now. I mean, you said, you mentioned something about like environmentally conscious, in particular with this card. And I feel that way too. I mean, I love nature. I love backpacking. I love being outside. I love hiking. I feel such a deep connection to myself when I'm in nature. And I feel very cut off from it when I don't spend enough time in nature. And I think that's a theme throughout the deck is it's very connected to nature. And I think that's such an important reminder and call to action to all of us to remember that this is, as human beings on this planet, we're just one piece of this puzzle. And it's not like we have dominion over another species. We all are so interdependent. And when species start to disappear as a result of our behavior and our habits, that's concerning. Yeah. It's very concerning. But the question I wanted to ask you, Jannie, before I let you all go is around poetry. You mentioned you are a writer, and did you say that you write poetry?
Yeah, yes. Yeah. Back in the day, in high school, college.
I love that. Yeah. Do you have any, are there any poets that you love that have inspired your writing over time?
Oh my gosh. Yes. Certainly Mary Oliver, which, you know, just her connection to nature is spirituality is so brilliant. And Joy Harjo, I think she's still currently the poet laureate, our first Native poet laureate. She's no words. Seamus Heaney, the Irish poet, who really just blew my mind back in the day. So those are three pretty different ones. I'm a huge fan of John O'Donoghue, who's a mystic. He's no longer with us, but an Irish mystic who wrote some beautiful books, Anam Cara, which means soul friend. He's got a book about the elements that was very inspiring to me. So, but going back to what you were saying about our interconnectedness and with the natural world, I mean, it is one of the inspirations for this deck. And we have so many little taglines, but this idea that everything is connected and everything is sacred. The pain, the joy, this earth.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Thank you.
I guess weirdly enough, just last part on the nature is when you feel like you're actually not able to understand anything around you and you can't communicate it. I found for some reason that drawing these pieces connected with people. It was my way of communicating at the time. So my experience with this is the only universal language for any person to relate to is nature. And that is terrifying because of all of the aforementioned issues. I care a lot more than I thought I did. And maybe if people get a chance to see a furry little field mouse that I named Lenny, who in my opinion is very happy, you know, that card, any card, a leopard diving into a dandelion could just maybe make you feel like, oh wait, this actually, it matters. It matters a lot.
Yeah. Well, I think there's something so cool too about seeing that in real life. There's something that makes you go and stops you in your tracks and just stare. And it's so cool when the animal that you're seeing stops and stares back and kind of looks like they're doing the same thing. The other day I was running, so I live close to Portland and I run around that area often. And there's this wildlife refuge along the river. And I was running along and I heard this kind of crashing through the bushes. And I was just like, I don't know, squirrel, bird, whatever. Deer. I see deer there regularly. But I saw a deer with this huge rack of antlers. Usually I see female deer. This massive, beautiful specimen, just like I've never seen anything like it before in the city of Portland. And there could be like not so great reasons for that, but also it was within the wildlife refuge. And I just got this glimpse of him running through the forest. And it just made me stop and go, what does that mean? It was the coolest thing.
They're just brilliant messengers and reminders, I think, for us to stay connected to those parts of ourselves that, you know, that when we see an animal and it just resonates within us,
Yeah.
A reminder. Yeah.
It sounds like you're talking about the card.
That's what I was thinking when you pulled that, actually.
What? That's incredible. Oh man, I love it. I love it. All right. That just made my entire week. Oh my goodness. Okay, cool. Fantastic.
Yeah. That was my first thought. So I had to squeak that in.
I love it.
Oh, thank you for sharing, man. Thank you.
The deck, this is what the deck does. It's just kind of what needs to show up, shows up.
Yeah. I cannot thank you enough for, first of all, creating this beautiful deck. I am so blessed to have it. I'm not kidding. I take this with me and it travels with me wherever I go lately. So it's so precious to me, and your work matters. So thank you for doing it, and thank you for sharing it with us. Is there anything else you want to share before we say goodbye?
Oh, it's been a real honor. We really have enjoyed. Kitty.
Yeah, she's my little star.
I love it. I have two black grand kitties.
Aw.
Yeah, Astro, Bean, and Binksley, and they are both adorable. So
they're precious.
They
kitties.
are.
First of all, it really has been incredible just seeing anything about this, because I genuinely didn't think this would happen. For 3 years. We just thought we were maybe going to do a Kickstarter. And I am wildly lucky to be able to have the support to get better, the help to get better, and then the freedom to still try and explore who I am. With my wife, my family, my siblings, my best friends, they all took on such a burden without realizing it right away. And I like to think and hope that if one thing actually does come out of this insanity that got this deck here, the beauty that got this deck here, the horror, the love, the tears, the blood, sometimes literally, that got this deck here, if that could make one person, hopefully more, but just one person, they could see a piece and say to themselves, I might not be as alone as I thought. I might not be as crazy. I hate that word. I may not be as crazy as I thought. I might be able to love myself either again or for the first time. I just hope the dialogue, at least around this, can help, because I needed it and I got it. And so maybe we can put that back out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Well, so where do people find your deck of cards? How do they connect with you?
On Instagram and Facebook, at
The Sacred Web Tarot.
And then our website, which is sacredwebtarot.com. And, we would love for people to share cards that they've pulled or ask us questions. On our website, there's a blog. I'm kind of working my way through all of the astrological houses and their relationship to tarot. So the Scorpio blog is up, and it's been just such a really cool experience to dive deeper into that, that language that's part of the language of tarot. So those places, and then you can, actually on our website, we have links to where you could buy from national, big box stores, and we're putting together a link of independent bookstores. So, because we really believe in supporting those beautiful spaces.
Yeah. Right now, you can find the Sacred Web Tarot Deck and Guidebook on Amazon.com or at your Barnes and Nobles, your Books A Million, and other similar large retailers. Stick around, follow the website, the sacredwebtarot.com, because we're adding local stores and local events soon, and we're excited to hopefully see you all there.
Yeah. I want some. We need some at Powell's.
Oh, I want to go to Powell's. Yes.
Yeah. We need to get you at Powell's.
Well, I actually have one of my brothers lives in Portland, so we might be able to do that.
Yes, please.
That sounds fantastic.
That would be fun.
Yep.
Cool.
Well, thank you both so much. I will let you enjoy your evenings, and it's just been such a blessing to get to know you both and to chat with you.
What a treat. Thank you so much, Tessa.
This was lovely, Tessa. Thank you for sharing and accepting us on here.
Well, everyone, that concludes another amazing episode of Outside the Studio. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I hope you learned something new, maybe remembered something old, maybe felt inspired to apply something to your life. You can hear my dog in the background. She's doing a little happy dance. So Daisy enjoyed it. Anyhow, I wanted to just pop in here to wrap us up to say a couple of things. Number one, I have such an amazing team that helps me put these podcasts together. Without them, I wouldn't, be able to bring these amazing conversations to you. So thank you to my producer, my director of creative services, my sound editor, my engineer, Consistency Media. Don't know what I would do without you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And the amazing creation and artistic, musical genius, Drew Lovern. Thank you so much for putting together this music specifically for Outside the Studio. So unique to the show, only place you're ever going to hear it is right here. Thanks, you guys. You make my world go round. Stay well, everyone. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review, share on the socials, especially if it's a show that you think, hey, this could help somebody else. That's what this is all about, right? We're sharing information so that we're better, so that we're inspired, so that we're lifting each other up, and we're learning how to be in this world, living on this planet to the best of our ability, sharing information and inspiring one another. And that's my hope. That's my hope for the show. Take care.